I just wanted to explore uh, that the city as a space and family as a structure, and what is it say in a culture which breeds such kind of a totalitarian kind of a society. Is it something? Well, what is the can we find some answers in the culture in our everydayness of how we live? With this particular thing, I had it's inspired by a short story by Brecht. So I had the character of the old woman, of someone changing at a later stage, that was there, and I had thought long time back of just making a short film on that. But then as things happened, things changed. My city where I was living, that changed. So I started feeling that there's no point in just making people, like and understand one character. In order to understand the complexity of a situation, you should be able to view it both from both perspectives. There's a conflict between two characters or four characters. You should be able to understand each one of them, and then you are able to see the complexity of the situation. And so then I thought, it's as important to not just give preference to one characters, but also include the whole family and the space. And maybe, from that space, one could go into the history of the present moment of our society and how we arrived at that. So, what intrigued me was that a lot of times, you now there are especially in Indian cinema, there are a lot of stories of of women suddenly changing and going through a journey. But usually, the stories are of young women, and it's told in a way that suddenly, they suddenly arrive, and then they start joining things. They go abroad, so it's like a lot of fun ride, and you just feel for them. So I thought, okay, it will be interesting to see someone who's not young, who is very old, and then to see things from her point of view, and especially, someone who is a mother, because our society is, very concerned with one mother, and earlier the mother figure was used to sort of sell an idea of, our country growing. Mother India is a prime example. The idea of mother gets associated with the country, and the country is growing. So I sort of making a reverse Mother India, where Mother India suddenly becomes a selfish woman. Then how will you treat? Will you give her the same respect, or no? You have a certain idea, and that figure has to respond to those kind of things. So that intrigued me, and one doesn't see, usually. I mean, there are films, in world cinema, but in Indian context, usually, the old people are either cute or funny, or they express the traditional things. I mean, especially say the mother-in-law. The traditional thing would be that mother-in-law is of certain kind, or in recent film suddenly, they will flip that idea, and suddenly mother-in-law is the most progressive kind. But they usually are a very archetypical kind of characters. So I thought of personally, I mean, for that why I got inspired. And usually, even the images of women you see either in the market or personal domain, it's always about young women. So to see a old woman in flesh and blood with all her dignity. It was a long process of writing, so I was in certain sense very fixed with things, not much scope of improvisation. But I was still, in terms of the rhythm of her performing actions, I was still thinking of how I will perform. And she, being her age, she will take that much of time to do things, and that changed, in some sense, certain rhythms of the scene. Also, the way she just sometimes there's a basic task and then she feels relaxed or happy, or then she has to struggle for certain things, and her breathing patterns. So that of an actual person who is at 74-year-old doing those things, I mean, that I got to learn firsthand while doing those things. And of course, she, with her vast experience of acting and also her personal life, she brought a lot of things, just in terms of how certain emotions have to be performed. And written word can be the same, but one it can be performed in various ways. So that kind of things, we will argue about, and she will say come up with certain thing which I found, yes, it's truthful, because she's coming with that kind of experience of her own life and her age. So that happened, and that didn't just happen with the that character of Mrs. Sharma, but also with other characters. So long time back we had decided that we will shoot it in a particular way, in long takes and looking at things objectively. So then the character movements decide, in some sense, does the idea of what an editing does, who comes forward, who goes backward, who overpowers just in terms of visually the other character, and then at what point they go back. So we wanted to play with that, because if say as opposed to cutting, you are playing with these things, then you want to play with blocking in that ways, and also the idea of off screen and on screen, that somebody might go off screen but say something which affects the on screen things, or somebody can block someone and that person becomes off screen, or someone movement can reveal the other person. So we wanted to have these small plays, so we were very sure, and also we wanted that even the mundane moment should play out with their own rhythms, not to hurry. That there are a lot of scenes where people are eating, then it should look like they are eating, or they are drinking tea, then they should look like they are drinking tea, because the idea was to give mundane things its importance rather than an event has to be important, and not also make to audience also settles into that kind of rhythm of just watching things as it is rather than expecting what next, the idea of plot deriving things. So that way we thought we should do it this way, and that way blocking also became an essential part of it. So I came into films, I think, almost accidentally. I was doing theatre and I felt okay, films will be something similar, and I joined my film school, which was a very important. I was part of FTII and teaching, and before that the theatre in my college in Kirolingan. But of late, I think I mean these films in an unconscious way I saw a lot, say, of of how Kiarostami and Nuri Bilge Ceylan, the Turkish filmmaker, how they treat their characters, and how the characters get shaped. So almost these two filmmakers, they literally, in terms of you have to take certain aesthetic decisions, and in terms of you see how in their very different contexts they took it, but you try and see what was their method, and you try and learn from those methods rather than looking at it short-wise. So I will say in a lot of ways of the idea of space, blocking, these things, sound, saying things. So I think these two filmmakers particularly, it's like unconsciously, not even conscious, sometimes unconsciously you imbibe a lot of things. And later on when you introspect, oh, maybe it comes from there. So I think, yeah, these two filmmakers are very, very important.